There's a saying among old park rangers, a piece of wisdom that's passed down from one generation to the next. The woods keep secrets. They say it with a knowing look, a slight, somber nod that hints at things they can't, or won't, explain. I used to think it was just a romantic notion, a way of personifying the vast, untamed wilderness they were charged with protecting. But after what I found, I've come to understand it's not a metaphor. It's a warning. My name isn't important. Let's just say I'm a digital ghost, a former cybersecurity analyst who found more solace in the quiet solitude of nature than in the sterile hum of a server room. I took a job as a seasonal ranger at Oak Creek National Park, a sprawling expanse of ancient trees and shadowed valleys that has a history as deep and dark as its densest groves. It was a career change, to say the least, swapping firewalls for fire lookouts. But I was happy. For a while. The park was in the process of a massive digital migration, upgrading their ancient, clunky systems to a new, cloud-based network. My predecessor, a man named Henderson who had retired after 30 years, had left behind a mess of outdated hardware and convoluted file structures. It was my job to sift through it, to archive what was important and securely wipe what wasn't. And that's how I found it. The old server, a relic from the late 90s, sitting in a dusty, forgotten corner of the main office's basement. It was scheduled to be decommissioned, its data wiped clean. But curiosity, as they say, is a dangerous thing. I had a feeling, a little itch at the back of my mind. These old systems, they're like time capsules, full of forgotten corners and hidden pathways. So one night, fueled by a thermos of strong coffee and a healthy dose of professional arrogance, I decided to do a little digital spelunking. It wasn't hard. The security protocols were a joke by today's standards. A few lines of code, a bit of finessing, and I was in. I had bypassed the main user interface and was looking at the raw directory. Most of it was mundane, exactly what you'd expect. Budgetary records, maintenance logs, employee schedules. But then I saw it. A partition drive, hidden but not very well. And within that drive, a single, password-protected folder labeled incident_reports_deleted. Deleted. That one word was the hook. Why delete incident reports? In any public service, especially one responsible for the safety of thousands of visitors each year, incident reports are gospel. They're documented, reviewed, and archived with meticulous care. Deleting them? That's not just bad practice. It's a cover-up. My fingers flew across the keyboard. The password was laughably simple. Thuwood Skeepsecrets. Henderson's password. A shiver, cold and sharp, traced a path down my spine. This wasn't just a hidden folder. This was a secret history, a collection of stories that someone, for some reason, had tried to erase. I clicked open the folder, and my world, the peaceful, quiet world I had built for myself in the heart of the wilderness, began to unravel. What I'm about to share with you are the contents of that folder. The deleted incident reports of Oak Creek National Park. These are the stories that the woods were never meant to tell. The first file I opened was dated May 14, 1998. The report was filed by a ranger named Marcus Thorne. I knew of him. His picture was on a plaque in the visitor center, a memorial to a ranger lost in the line of duty. The official story was that he'd been caught in a flash flood in the southern part of the park. This report, it told a different story. Incident Report 98-05-14A. Reporting Ranger, Marcus Thorne. Location, Whispering Caves, Sector 7G. Subject, auditory hallucinations/hiker disorientation. Called out to the Whispering Caves area to investigate a report of a missing hiker, a young man named Julian Carter. His friends, visibly shaken, said he had wandered into the caves and hadn't come out. They claimed he was acting strangely beforehand, talking about hearing voices from within the rock. This is the third such report from this specific cave system in the last 2 years. The other two were written off as inexperienced hikers getting lost, but Julian was an experienced caver. As I approached the entrance, I could hear it. A low, murmuring sound. It's a common phenomenon in these caves. The way the wind moves through the narrow passages often creates a sound that resembles whispering. That's how they got their name. But this was different. It wasn't the wind. It sounded organic, sibilant, like dozens of people whispering at once, just on the edge of my hearing. I proceeded into the main chamber. The whispering grew louder, more distinct. I couldn't make out any words, but the cadence was conversational. It felt like I had walked into a crowded room with my ears plugged with cotton. I called out Julian's name. The whispering stopped. Abruptly, the silence that followed was somehow more unnerving than the noise. I found Julian's headlamp first, lying on the floor, still on. Its beam was pointed at a narrow crevice in the far wall, a passage not marked on any of our park maps. As I got closer, the whispering started again, but this time it was different. It was one voice, a child's voice, and it was singing a nursery rhyme, one I hadn't heard since my own childhood. I can't explain the fear that seized me in that moment. It was a primal, gut-wrenching terror. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. I called for backup, citing structural instability in the cave as a reason to pull back the search for the night. I know I should have gone in, should have followed the voice, but every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run. I am recommending that the whispering caves be permanently sealed. I don't know what's in there, but it's not the wind, and it's not a place for the living. Below the report was a scanned addendum, written in Henderson's familiar scrawl. Thorn was found 2 weeks later at the bottom of a ravine, miles from the Whispering Caves. Coroner ruled it an accidental fall. The caves were sealed the following month, citing geological instability as per Thorn's recommendation. The official report on Julian Carter lists him as a missing person, presumed deceased due to misadventure. My blood ran cold. The plaque in the visitor center, Thorn's smiling face a lie. A carefully constructed narrative to hide a truth so disturbing. They chose to bury it in a concrete seal and a deleted file. What had Thorn heard? And what had happened to Julian Carter? I had to know more. I dug deeper into the archive. The next set of files was a cluster, all from the summer of 2002. They all centered around a place in the park known as Lookout Point, a scenic overlook with a panoramic view of the entire valley. It was a popular spot for tourists and amateur photographers. But for a few months in 2002, it was something else entirely. The first report was from a young seasonal ranger, clearly rattled by what she had seen. Incident Report 02-06-21A. Reporting Ranger, Sarah Jenkins. Location, Lookout Point, Sector 4B. Subject, unidentified male/stalking complaint. Received a call from a pair of hikers who reported being watched by a man at Lookout Point. They described him as tall, wearing an old, dark suit that seemed out of place for the summer weather. They said the most disturbing thing about him was his face. They couldn't describe it. Not that they had forgotten it, but that it was blank. Like a mannequin. No features. They said they felt a wave of intense dread when he turned to look at them, and they fled the area immediately. I drove up to Lookout Point to investigate. The area was empty. I found a single fresh flower, a black rose, placed on the railing of the overlook. There were no footprints other than those of the hikers. I canvassed the area for an hour but found no sign of the man they described. I'm filing this report, but I have a feeling it's just a prank. a story to scare other hikers. But it wasn't just a prank. Over the next 3 months, more than a dozen similar reports came in. The description was always the same. A tall man in a dark suit, with a smooth, featureless face. He never spoke. He never threatened anyone directly. He just watched. And his presence was always accompanied by an overwhelming sense of terror. The reports grew more and more frantic. People started avoiding Lookout Point altogether. Then came the report from Ranger Henderson himself. Incident Report 02-09-15B. Reporting Ranger David Henderson. Location: Lookout Point, Sector 4B. Subject: aggressive encounter/officer assistance required. I've been monitoring the situation at Lookout Point for weeks. The stories of this faceless man are causing a panic. I decided to spend the night at the Overlook, see for myself if there's any truth to these rumors. I didn't have to wait long. He appeared just after dusk, standing at the far end of the parking lot. The descriptions were accurate. Tall, gaunt, in a suit that looked like it was from another era. And his face, his face. It wasn't just blank. It was absorbent, like a void. Felt like it was pulling the light out of the air around it. I drew my service weapon. I called out to him, identified myself as a park ranger. He didn't respond. He just started walking towards me. Slowly, deliberately. With each step, the air grew colder. The crickets went silent. Felt like the whole forest was holding its breath. I aimed my flashlight at him. The beam hit his face and just stopped. It didn't reflect. It didn't illuminate anything. It just vanished. I've never seen anything like it. He was 20 feet away when I fired a warning shot into the air. He didn't even flinch. He just kept coming. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran. I got in my truck and I drove away as fast as I could. I could feel his presence all the way back to the main office. We are closing Lookout Point indefinitely. I don't know what that thing is, but it's not human, and it's not welcome in my park. The final entry in the cluster was a work order, dated a week after Henderson's report. It was for the installation of a permanent, chain-link fence around the entire Lookout Point area, with signs warning of unstable cliff edges. Another lie, another piece of the park's true history, hidden behind a veil of plausible deniability. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dust motes dancing in the stale basement air, the whispering caves, the faceless man. These weren't isolated incidents. This was a pattern, a history of the unnatural, the terrifying, the things that lurk just beyond the edges of our understanding. And someone, Henderson, had been trying to keep it all under wraps. Why? To protect the public? Or to protect something else? My gaze fell on the scroll bar. There were still so many files left to open. I knew I should stop. I knew I should log out, wipe the server, and pretend I had never found this digital Pandora's box. But I couldn't. I had to see what other horrors Oak Creek National Park was hiding. The deeper I went into the archive, the more the reports seemed to blur the lines between reality and nightmare. The next file was from the mid-2000s and dealt with the park's largest body of water, a deep, cold lake called Serenity Lake. After reading this report, I can assure you, its name is a cruel irony. Incident Report 06-07-22C. Reporting Ranger Michael Chong. Location: Serenity Lake, North Shore. Subject: drowning/unidentified biological anomaly. Responded to a call about a possible drowning at Serenity Lake. A group of college students were camping on the North Shore. One of them, a young woman named Emily Vance, had gone for a late-night swim and never returned. Her friends were hysterical. They said she was a strong swimmer, that she wouldn't have just drowned. We initiated a search and rescue operation. The dive team went in at first light. An hour later, they pulled her body from the water. The official cause of death will be listed as drowning. But there's more to it. Something the coroner won't put in his report. Her body was entangled, wrapped in a thick, fibrous substance that none of us could identify. It looked like a cross between seaweed and muscle tissue. It was a dark, almost black color, and it was still pulsing, gently, like it was alive. The divers said the bottom of the lake is covered in the stuff. They described it as a carpet of this living, fibrous growth, stretching as far as their lights could penetrate the murky depths. They also said they felt a pressure, a sense of being watched from below. Two of the most experienced divers on the team are refusing to go back in the water. We managed to cut a sample of the substance from Emily's body. It's in a containment unit now, on its way to a lab for analysis. But the most disturbing part of this whole incident, Emily didn't have any water in her lungs. She didn't drown. According to the preliminary findings, she died of fright. I am recommending that Serenity Lake be closed to all recreational activities until we can determine what this substance is and what it's capable of. The official story will be a bacterial bloom. But I know what I saw. There's something in that lake. Something ancient. And I don't think Emily Vance was its first victim. Attached to the report was a grainy, low-resolution image. It was a close-up of the substance. It looked wrong. Unnatural, a tangled mass of dark, glistening fibers that seemed to writhe even in the stillness of the photograph. And in the center of the mass, almost hidden in the shadows, I could just make out what looked like an eye. A pale, milky white orb, staring out from the darkness. A wave of nausea washed over me. I had swam in that lake. I had taken a boat out onto its placid surface, blissfully unaware of the living carpet of nightmare that lay just a few dozen feet below. Henderson's notes were at the bottom of the file, as always. Lab results on the sample were inconclusive. The substance disintegrated within hours of being removed from the water. Serenity Lake was closed for the remainder of the season due to a persistent and aggressive algal bloom. All further reports of strange occurrences at the lake are to be filed directly with me and will not be entered into the main log. He wasn't just hiding these events. He was actively suppressing them, creating a shadow record, a secret history of the park that only he was privy to. But why? What was he trying to achieve? Was he protecting the park, or was he protecting it? The source of these horrors, the unifying thread that tied all these disparate, terrifying events together. My mind was racing. The caves that whisper, the man with no face, the living lake. They couldn't all be unrelated. There had to be a connection. And I had a sickening feeling that the answer was waiting for me in the last and most recent of the deleted files. The last file in the archive was different. It wasn't an incident report. It was a personal log, a series of entries written by Henderson himself, starting just a few weeks before his retirement. Reading it, I finally understood the truth, the terrible, all-encompassing truth of Oak Creek National Park. Personal log, David Henderson. Entry 1. They're getting stronger, more frequent. The whispers from the caves are louder now. I can hear them from the main road on a clear night. The man at Lookout Point, he's been seen on other trails, closer to the visitor center. And the lake, the divers won't go near it anymore. They say the carpet is growing, moving. It's all connected. I've known it for years. I just didn't want to believe it. Entry 2. I found it in the old archives, in the journals of the first warden of this park, a man named Jedediah Blackwood. He wrote about it in hushed, fearful tones. He called it the Ancient One, the Sleeper in the Woods. He said it was here long before the park, long before the men who named these mountains and valleys. He said the park itself is its body. The caves are its lungs, the lake is its heart, and the things that walk its paths, they are its thoughts, its dreams, and its nightmares. Entry 3. Blackwood and the first rangers, they understood. They knew they couldn't fight it. They couldn't destroy it. So they made a pact, an agreement. They would protect it. They would keep its secrets. They would feed it. Small sacrifices. A lost hiker here, a careless camper there. They would write them off as accidents, as the unfortunate but inevitable cost of preserving such a vast and untamed wilderness. In return, the Ancient One would slumber. It would remain dormant, its influence contained within the boundaries of the park. Entry 4. I have upheld that pact for 30 years. I have filed the false reports. I have erased the evidence. I have lied to the families of the missing. I have carried the weight of their faces, their questions, their grief. I have done it all to keep the balance, to keep the sleeper from waking. But the balance is shifting. The new world, with its technology, its connectivity, it's intruding. The park is more popular than ever. The old ways are being forgotten. The pact is failing. Entry 5. My time is done. I can't carry this burden any longer. I've deleted the reports, hidden them away where no one will ever find them. I've set the server to be wiped. It's better this way. Let the memory of these things fade. Let the woods keep their secrets. My replacement starts tomorrow. Some tech guy from the city. He won't understand. He'll see the old ways as inefficient, the old systems as obsolete. He'll want to change things, to improve them. He doesn't know what he's walking into. I'm leaving this log as a final warning, a message in a bottle. If you are reading this, it means you have my curiosity, my arrogance. It means you have looked behind the curtain. And now you know, you are the new keeper of the pact. You must protect the sleeper. You must feed the woods, or we will all be consumed by its waking. My hands were shaking. I pushed myself away from the desk, my chair scraping against the concrete floor. The basement suddenly felt smaller, the shadows deeper. The hum of the server was no longer a gentle, mechanical sound. It sounded like a heartbeat, a slow, ancient, and impossibly large heartbeat. I had come to the park seeking peace, a refuge from the complexities of the modern world. Instead, I had stumbled into a secret war, a generations-long conspiracy to appease a cosmic horror that slumbered beneath the very ground I walked on. Henderson was wrong. I couldn't be the new keeper. I couldn't be a part of this sacrificial ritual. I had to expose it. I had to warn people. I copied the files to a secure, encrypted drive. Then I initiated the server wipe, just as I was supposed to. I watched as the progress bar slowly filled, erasing Henderson's secret history, his desperate attempt to maintain a fragile and horrifying peace. But as I left the basement that night, I could feel it. A change in the air, a new awareness. The woods were watching me. The sleeper was stirring. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to my very soul, that by uncovering its secrets, I had done something far worse than just break a pact. I had rung the dinner bell. I resigned from my position at Oak Creek National Park the next day. I didn't give a reason. I just left. I have the files, the proof. But who would believe me? Who would listen? They would call me crazy, a disgruntled employee spinning wild tales. But you've heard the reports. You've seen the truth. I don't know what's happening at Oak Creek now. I don't want to know. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind whispers through the trees outside my window, I think I can hear it. The sibilant murmur of the caves. The cold, empty silence of the man with no face. The slow, hungry pulse of the thing in the lake. The woods keep their secrets. But for how much longer? Thank you for listening to the Wilderness Protocol. If these stories from the dark corners of the world intrigue you, if you feel a pull towards the mysteries that lie just beyond the firelight, then please subscribe to our channel. Share this with those who you think are brave enough to listen. And remember, the next time you find yourself walking alone in the wilderness, you are never truly alone. Stay safe out there.